Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about the hot topic of short-term rentals here in Sedona. And who better to discuss that with us than Scott Jablow, the Vice Mayor of Sedona. Should be interesting and informative. So please stay tuned. Hi everyone, my name is Rick Baker. I'm with Russ Lyon Sotheby's International Realty here in Sedona, Arizona. And today I have a special guest, the Vice Mayor of Sedona, Scott Jablow. How are you doing today, Scott?
Very good. Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate you being here today and to discuss a little bit about short-term rentals and with the people of Sedona. And thought I'd read a little bit of background about you. And Scott has served on the City Council since 2014 and is currently your Vice Mayor, which is a position appointed by his colleagues there on the City Council. Scott holds a degree in criminal justice and worked for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey for over 30 years. He was a police officer and later a senior police accident investigator with training from the U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's also served in the Police Emergency Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Unit. Sounds pretty exciting. He's an award-winning community leader in Long Island. And before becoming elected to the Sedona City Council, Scott appropriately served on the Sedona Fire District Board, City Planning and Zoning Commission, and Personnel Board. And quite notably, you were instrumental in building the 9/11 Memorial, which is in front of the city, the fire district, Sedona Fire District, station number 6, and it features a 3,000-pound girder, which you helped negotiate from the Port Authority in New York and New Jersey. And of course, quite notably, you're a candidate for mayor in our upcoming election. So you do bring a lot of experience and knowledge to our city. So we appreciate that and honor that. So thank you, welcome, and appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
Sure. So, of course, a lot of people want to know about short-term rentals. It's a hot topic, and I was researching a lot of the background and history of it. I know when I came to Sedona in 2006, it was pretty much not allowed, and apparently there's an ordinance going back to 1995 in Sedona, and then I guess one of the big changes to the law was in 2006, which Proposition 207, or otherwise known as the Private Property Protections Act. What can you tell us about the past history of short-term rentals?
Prop 207 was voted on by the voters in the state, and it's a property rights ordinance, and it allows people to maintain their property rights in their homes. So if a city and town should make any changes that negatively impacts the property owner, they have recourse. So if a city or town were to do something to devalue their property, they have to be able to prove that. It's not an easy test to do. You can't just go in and say, well, a realtor and appraiser devalued my property. I'm going to collect money for it. It has to go through the courts, and they are entitled to some type of compensation, whatever the courts decide. So we're pretty strict, and we adhere to it. And when we make any type of legislative changes, we are very cautious about that. So when short-term rentals came around, that was done by the state, not cities and towns. So that makes a big difference. The fact that I strongly, with my personal opinion, that in some cases, having a short-term rental next to a regular property owned and occupied residence, it might, in some cases, devalue that property. But that's the state doing it, not the city and town.
Right. Yeah. The state has, the city has traditionally fought against short-term rentals, and whether you're for or against them as a property owner, or you can certainly hear the complaints from uh, people who are residents that, well, there's noise, and it's just a different atmosphere, and it disrupts the integrity of the neighborhood. And and I was researching this, and so they actually passed, not to, I mean, it's just been a kind of a long history
Yeah,
of litigation. The city passed an enforcement ordinance even in 2008 that provided for jail time and fines for short-term rentals, and then that got challenged, and then I guess there was a state short-term rental law 2017.
mhm,
So as it stands now, it looks like short-term rentals are definitely here to stay.
right. And there's a very unique difference between when we say short-term rentals. There are owner-occupied short-term rentals, or even owner maintained short-term rentals, and then the corporate owned. And that's where we're finding many of the instances where you have a corporation, even if you have a property manager, they are not doing as good a job as an owner occupied short-term rental in maintaining peace and tranquility. Their next door neighbors, uh, uh, acceptance, they get along better. I have one across the street from me that I know the owner. He lives down the valley. He's very responsive. Never had it. Well, we had a minor problem. There was a house fire there a number of years ago, but other than that, it couldn't be better. I mean, we haven't had any instances, but that's my own personal experience. Other people in certain parts of the city are having extreme challenges due to noise and such. And the problem is that the state is very restrictive. When they instituted 1168, the bottom line was we have to treat a short-term rental as a home, as an owner-occupied home, even though we know it's not. And even though the state is gaining sales tax from that home, as is the city, right? But they have that restriction on us. And when they imposed 1168 on us around the same time, they removed local control from cities and towns to do anything that we want to do. In almost every other state that I can find, other states allow their cities and towns to regulate as they see fit. Whether it's a cap, whether it's ordinances, enforcement, they can do what they need to do. Here in Arizona, we can't. Our hands are virtually tied. There was a new bill. I know we're going to be talking about 1168 shortly. That's just a tip of the iceberg of the things that we need to make changes to bring them into alignment. But keep in mind, one important fact I have to always remind myself to say is that if there's any legislative changes, even from the state, any short-term rental that's in place at that time is grandfathered in. And that's an important factor,
Yeah, which leads me to my next question. I mean, there have been some inroads into regulation that's current, which would be informative for people to know, and which means that if you do have a short-term rental, you're required to have a license or register with the city of Sedona. Is that correct? And
that's correct. And I mean, I believe the last time I checked, which is a month or so ago, our participation in registering is close to 85% to 90%. And we're going to be going after legally, going after the others that are not.
okay. And also there's been you have to have an emergency contact on file, and they have to have a transaction privilege tax. So
They want that tax. That's why the state wanted these, to have that tax money. That's the only reason.
Okay. And also for people who are concerned, they've established a hotline and website. If someone lives next to one that happens to be troublesome, then there's a way to file a complaint about that. So, but I don't want to say I agree with what you're saying. There are a lot of short-term rental owners who are very responsible, who know their neighbors and make it. It doesn't impact the quality of neighborhoods that way when they're at home at their property. So So I know that uh, Sedona hired a lobbyist,
Yes.
and so there was a bill that was active for a while, and I went on the Sedona website and the city's website, and it says there's no current legislation, but there would have that passed committee, and that bill would have allowed more regulation. Can you?
Well, we have 1168 that just passed. I have it. The
Oh,
city,
okay.
that city has not had a meeting to discuss what exactly 1168, what we could pull from it, all of, what, and most likely we'll pull everything from 1168 to use. But we have to have a council meeting to institute anything. And that's what's, we just are unfortunately busy with other topics, and we haven't had, I believe it'll be coming up before the end of the year. And we'll be instituting everything. Well, we have to, I should clarify, we have to discuss instituting everything within 1168. We don't have to, and that's why we have to have a meeting to discuss it.
And what will that potentially be? This new ordinance or this new legislation gives the city more authority.
I like to say it's going to do a lot. It's not going to do much at all. It's unfortunate, but what's unique to about this, and you mentioned the lobbyist. This is the first time we had a lobbyist that we've hired, and it's the first time there's been any kind of changes with bills. I mean, I've gone down to the state capitol several times and testified, as have other council people and public. Hiring a lobbyist, I found, got us a seat at the table with other cities and towns that have lobbyists. Okay, and it happens to be other cities that also are tourist based. And this was a change. But it's the first time we've had a change. And this is also the first time now, I believe we haven't had as much of a change, because there's always been lobbyists on the other side working against us. The Goldwater Institute, for one, is a big opponent of any change. They are believing in any kind of property rights bill and no change. They don't care about the next door neighbors. Because I actually asked at the subcommittee, I mentioned that Arizona is being a property rights state. How about the next door neighbor? What about their property rights? And I was told, basically, we don't care. They really didn't answer the question. They don't care about the next door neighbors. They don't care about other people's property rights. They care about short-term rental owner property rights. But now it's disappointing that the real estate lobbyists have jumped on against cities and towns, which is very disappointing. I don't know why. I'm not going to assume why. I don't like to assume anything. But now we have these two power organizations fighting against us. Working with us is our Arizona League of Cities and Towns, which is a lobbyist, but they lobby for all 91 cities and towns. And not all cities are against them. Some cities don't have hotels in their, anywhere in the parameters, and they're happy to have short-term rentals.
So specifically, what would this new legislation? I mean, does it limit the number of short-term rentals? Is that the main thing?
That's what we really wanted. We wanted a cap. There was a bill that was proposed by Sylvia Allen, Representative Sylvia Allen. That was a great proposal. And it just didn't go far enough. But this is the first time we had somebody such as Sylvia Allen working for the residents, working for cities and towns, and she was really gung-ho for it, and it just didn't have the votes. And we had the two opposing lobbyists going against us. Mm-hmm. And that really was disappointing. So it's not going to give us a cap right now. But again, when a cap does come to play, anything that's in place before the cap is instituted will remain.
Okay. And so we don't have state legislation yet that will put a cap on the number of short-term rentals. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And so if somebody wants to know more about short-term rentals, the City of Sedona website, I noticed, has an entire page dedicated to information and what they need to do.
Right.
And and also I noticed more recent headlines that there's an incentive for homeowners who may have been doing short-term rentals to receive income for converting to a longer-term rental.
right, it's a test program. Along comes short-term rentals, and by now people in the city should know, residents in the city should know, we don't have apartment buildings. We don't have a lot of housing for our workforce. And over the years that, our workforce had lived in regular homes because we don't have apartment buildings, either complexes or townhouses for our workforce to live in. So they lived in homes, they shared bedrooms and what have you. And every day you see on Nextdoor, let me clarify, not every day, but many days you'll see on social media, people getting evicted. People, our workforce has to leave, whether they go to Cottonwood, Cornville, Camp Verde, because that home is being turned into a short-term rental. So that's one of the big negatives that we're encountering. We have no place for our workforce to live.
Mhm.
So we're trying to be very creative in what we do. We have some ideas with actually behind Walgreens off of 89A. We're doing a project to have 40 some odd units of all workforce housing. We bought into a developer's project to buy down the rents, and it will be 100% workforce housing where you have to live in the city. You have to work in the city at a full-time job, 30 hours or more, and be able to produce documentation, legal documentation to prove that. And then you will be able to get reduced rents for new 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. But that is only one project. We have another one in the wings right near City Hall. We plan on having 22 units right next to City Hall. That's not even a blip on the screen for enough. We did a study years ago. We actually need, if we could, have 1,500 workforce housing units. And even mixed use long-term apartments. We don't even have enough of those, of people who want to come here and live there as well. So we need more housing. So because so many people are converting their homes to short-term rentals, we're trying to incentivize them to consider going to a long-term rental, a room, the house. Short-term rentals isn't for everybody. It's a lot of work. It's not easy for these people to do what they do, and not everybody can do it. Once they jump in, they realize it's not as easy for some people, especially once you get older. It's a little bit harder. Even with a property manager, there's a lot of frustrations involved. There's a lot of damage involved by the tenants that come in and visit.
Uh-huh.
We're hoping to incentivize. Will it work? I hope so.
Okay.
It's actually working in other cities and towns across the country. We hired a housing manager that we share with Cottonwood, who's been very productive and coming up with unique ideas. We have to try whatever we can to sit back and say, well, can't do anything. Our restaurants are closing. We just had a very prominent restaurant in town. The word on the street, I haven't heard it from the owner's mouth, but they are closed. And it's a good possible reason is that they can't get enough employees. Every business is hurting. You can't go into any business. You can't go into any professional office, a doctor, a lawyer. There's a problem with employees. So,
and a lot of people, businesses are cutting their hours back, and
right.
Yeah, it's a problem. So
it is.
Yeah. Well, Scott, you certainly have a breadth of knowledge of this topic, and I appreciate you coming on today and talking. Was there anything else you wanted to mention before we go, or?
I have a lot more to say, but not enough time to say it in.
Yeah, no.
This is one of my favorite topics because we're doing things. We're not just saying we need to do something. Mm-hmm. I've been, the council I work with, I can't take all the credit because I'm working with a council, additional 6 people. We do it together. We have a staff that are highly educated in what they do, and they give us some great proposals. That's why I'm very happy with the process that we have, but we're doing things.
Okay.
Maybe some other time I can come on and talk with you again about some of the other topics. And sure. I just appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you being here today, and wish you luck in your future endeavors. And just, I'm really so impressed with the work you've done. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good seeing you.
Bye-bye.